morning in the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Please be seated. So we have arrived at that time of the year where instead of it being almost impossible to find a place to park at the shopping mall, it's now the gym that is bursting at the seams where you can't find a place to park. We've arrived at that time of the year where instead of our cupboards at home being stuffed with chips and junk food and all those lovely treats that we have over the holidays, and our bowls on the counter are overflowing with fruit, and the crispers in our refrigerators are stocked with fresh vegetables. And that's because with the coming of a new year comes the perfect opportunity for us to make a fresh start, to mark a new beginning, or to start a new chapter in our lives, and to make some necessary changes in order to become the person that we each believe we should be. And if you think about it, each week actually offers us that same opportunity. Every Sunday, the first day of the week, is an opportunity for us to make a new beginning. And actually, every day, every morning as we wake up, we are offered that gift. Every morning when our eyes open, we get to choose who we will be. We get to decide how we will live our lives. And we get to commit ourselves to what changes we are going to make that day. But somehow it just seems bigger. It just seems a little bit more significant when it's at the beginning of a new year. And so as January rolls around every year, as it rolls around again this year, countless people have been busy making resolutions and making promises to make this the year that they are going to strive to be the person they want to be. And so many of the New Year's resolutions that get made, so many of those resolutions are about committing to changing something about themselves in order to become who they think they should be, in order to become who they think others expect them to be. And some of the most popular resolutions that people make seem to be directly related to our physical self-image. The most popular resolutions that people make: to eat healthier, to get fit, to exercise more, to lose weight, to go to the gym, to walk every day. Last year in my own life, the resolutions that I made kind of followed that pattern. I resolved that I was going to exercise and I was going to eat healthier. And the reason I was going to do that was so that I could lose some of the extra weight that I was carrying. As we came to the end of the year and I reflected on those resolutions, I realized that, yes, I went to the gym more, and I played a whole lot of hockey, but apparently I like my chips and my fast food a little bit too much. So I failed on that side of the resolution. As we enter this new year, I haven't yet decided on my New Year's resolutions yet. But I'm thinking that this might be the year that I finally focus on dealing with the anxiety that often runs rampant in my mind. And to continue in the theme of last year, I'm thinking I might continue with the resolution to keep trying to eat healthier. So I'm thinking that those might be my resolutions this year. But I read a blog earlier in the week written by a guy named Scott Evans. And Scott said something that I found pretty profound. He said that when it comes to making a resolution, when it comes to wanting to change something about yourself, we first need to pause and really ask ourselves, what is driving our desire to change? Before we get to the point of asking what we want to change about ourselves, we have to ask and really think about, why do we want that to change? So for me, do I want to get my anxiety under control because of the peace I am longing for? Is that my motivation? Or do I want to get my anxiety under control because of how I want others to perceive me? Do I want to get my anxiety under control, believing that if I get a handle on my anxiety, that others somehow will accept me more if I don't have those kinds of struggles in my life? Or do I want to lose 20 pounds because I would be healthier if I was a bit slimmer? Or do I want to be slimmer because of how I think I will be perceived by others? That if only I was thin, if only I was thinner, people would desire to be around me more. As Scott said in his blog, the truth is that the answer to that question is that it's probably both. And that's okay. That's part of the complexity of being human. But as he says, as we dive deeper into our motivation, as we dive deeper into thinking about why it is we want to change, we eventually come face to face with what we truly believe about who we are and what we are worth. Do you believe that you are loved? Or do you feel that you need to change something about yourself in order to become lovable? If only I got to this point in my life, that's when people would really love me. Do you believe that you have value? Or do you want to change in order to prove your value to the world? If only I accomplish this, then the world would see what I'm truly worth. Do you believe that you are enough in this present moment? Or do you want to change in order to become enough? Before we get to the point of asking what we want to change about ourselves, we need to really and truly ask ourselves, why do we want that to change? There are voices in our culture that constantly bombard us with the message that we are not good enough, not skinny enough, not pretty enough, not young enough, not successful enough. That's how companies, that's how our capitalistic society works, convincing us that we aren't enough as we are and that we need to buy that product in order to use that product so somehow we will be better and more acceptable and more lovable to others. We also have those voices in our own minds, or at least I do. We have those voices in our own mind that tell us the same thing, that we are not good enough as we are, that we need to change to become someone and something other than who we are right now before we will be deserving of love, before we will be accepted by others. I have shared this with you before, but sometimes my anxiety spins out of control. And when it is at its worst, there's this unrelenting voice inside my head that I simply cannot quiet. It's a voice that constantly says, I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I don't work hard enough, my sermons aren't perfect enough, I don't visit people enough, that I'm a bad father, that I don't spend enough time with my kids. It can be absolutely and utterly exhausting. Utterly exhausting, constantly trying to do everything absolutely perfect all the time in order to quiet that voice, in an attempt to feel good enough. And I don't think I'm alone in that struggle. Because the fact that countless people have made all kinds of resolutions in their life at this time of the year, all these resolutions to change something about themselves, to go on a diet, to lose some weight, to stop smoking or drinking, to spend more time with the family, to be kinder and more generous. All those resolutions tell me I'm not alone. And again, it comes back to the question. Before I get to the point of asking myself what it is I want to change about my life, I have to ask myself, why is it I want that to change? If you want to change in order to be healthier, in order to take better care of yourself, in order to improve on some area of your life, that's absolutely great. But if the deeper underlying motivation that we don't often spend very much time paying attention to, if the underlying motivation for your New Year's resolution is to prove all the voices of our culture and all the voices in your head wrong about you not being worthy of love and acceptance just the way you are, then today's gospel is for you. There is a song by Andrew Peterson called Be Kind to Yourself. And I've shared the lyrics of this song with you before. But I want to share them with you again today because I think they are absolutely perfect for this particular Sunday in which we celebrate the baptism of Jesus. In this song he sings, "You've got all that emotion that's heaving like an ocean, and you're drowning in a deep, dark well. I can hear it in your voice that if you only had a choice, you would rather be anyone else." And then at this point in the song, we have to picture the voice of God speaking to each one of us, speaking right into the depths of our soul. God says, "I love you just the way that you are. Be kind to yourself." The secular world is calling this whole idea self-compassion. The song goes on. I know it's hard to hear it when that anger in your spirit is pointed like an arrow at your chest. When the voices that are in your mind are anything but kind, and you cannot believe your Father knows best. Again, God says that when we're in that kind of place in our lives, God says, "I love you just the way that you are. Be kind to yourself." How does it end when the war that you're in is just you against you against you? You've got to learn to love your enemies too. And here's my favorite line in the song. You can't expect to be perfect. It's a fight you've got to forfeit. You belong to me whatever you do. So lay down your weapon and take a deep breath and really and truly believe that God loves you. Believing that God loves you. Trusting that you are enough. That you are enough for God even though you are not perfect. Believing that you do not have to earn that love by changing or fixing something about yourself. It's such an important part of today's story about the baptism of Jesus. Because as Scott pointed out in his blog, at Jesus' baptism, Jesus hears life-giving words that become absolutely foundational for him. He hears life-giving words that tell him who he is, for how he sees himself, and for ultimately how he feels about himself. These life-giving words, they stay with him, and they stay with him throughout the temptations that he experiences in the wilderness. These life-giving words, they help him to frame how it is he lives his life, how he navigates the ways of how he's going to interact with the people he meets, how he's going to love and serve those he encounters. These life-giving words, they give him strength in his life. They help him to endure the suffering and the difficult times that he experiences, including his suffering and his death on the cross. So what are these life-giving words that are so foundational for Jesus? As the dove descends at his baptism, Jesus hears these words from God. You are my son. You are my beloved. With you I am so well pleased. Now, what's really and truly important to hold on to and to remember here is that at the moment Jesus hears these life-giving words from a God who loves him unconditionally, at this moment, Jesus has done absolutely nothing at all to earn that love. At this point, Jesus has not yet developed much of a following. He does not have throngs of disciples following him everywhere. At this moment, Jesus has not yet healed the sick or restored the sight to the blind. He hasn't raised the dead. He hasn't preached to thousands or fed thousands. At this point in his life, Jesus has not yet done much of anything. He does not become a child of God or receive God's love or become pleasing in God's eyes because of what he has done. He hasn't done anything yet. Instead, everything that Jesus is about to do in his life from this moment on, everything that Jesus will do, all of the things that we read about, the feedings, the miracles, even his death on the cross, all of it will flow from knowing who he is, from knowing whose he is, and from knowing that he is unconditionally loved by God no matter what. We have heard that same divine voice in our own lives at our own baptism. As water is poured over our heads, as we are marked as Christ's own forever, God has said to each one of us, God has said to you, and God has said to me, you are my beloved child, and with you I am so well pleased. Our baptism is about dying to this way of life in which we have convinced ourselves that somehow we need to change in order to earn love and acceptance, either by others or by God. Baptism is about rising to a new way of approaching our lives. Baptism is about rising to a new way of living in which we learn to trust and accept that there is absolutely nothing we can ever do to earn God's love because we are already loved right now for who we are, growing edges and all. The motivation for our choices, the motivation for our actions in this new life, it stops being about trying to prove anything either to ourselves or to anyone else. Our motivation stops being about trying to prove that we are good enough. And rather, like Jesus, our motivation for everything that we do, it flows now from knowing who we are, whose we are, and who loves us unconditionally. Our motivation for how we live becomes about living in response to that reality that we are already loved just as we are. We give, we serve, we forgive, we show mercy, we offer compassion, we love, not to earn anything from anyone, but because God first loved us. Which brings us back to the resolutions that many of us make at this time of year. There's absolutely nothing wrong with making a New Year's resolution. But as you do, ask yourself this: are you changing in order to be loved? Or is love changing you?